Welcome to Thinking Boldly. This is the podcast series for the Concilium Institute. I'm retired Judge Julie Field, and I am here with my partner and colleague, Heidi Webb. We are the co-founders of the Concilium Institute, and we are so excited to have as our guest today Steve Vertucci, who is an attorney and one of the early adopters of the Concilium process and a practicing Concilium practitioner. So, Steve, thank you so much for being with us today.
Heidi, Julie, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, let me tell the world a little bit about you before we launch into our conversation here. Steve, you've been a family law attorney for 22 of your 24 years in practice, and you were a prosecutor before that, if I recall.
My gosh, it seems like 9 lives ago, but yes, I was a felony prosecutor in Maricopa County down in Phoenix in the early 2000s.
Oh, wow. But since then, you've practiced in the Chicago area, in Phoenix, and in Colorado, and you've been in Colorado since about 2007.
Correct.
Um, and Steve, you have a solo practice since 2016 here in Fort Collins,
Mm,
Colorado.
That's right. We're celebrating 10 years this year.
And you were born and raised in one of my favorite towns, the Windy City of Chicago. I want to talk a little bit more later this afternoon about your hobbies, which are movies, old-time radio shows, and of course, spending time with your wife and family. So Steve, we're just very excited to have this conversation with you, and thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. This is my first podcast, so bear with me.
Oh,
Well, we're honored that you chose to be with us for your first podcast. This will be a really fun conversation. I just know it.
Great.
absolutely. So you talked about some of your different practice backgrounds, being a prosecutor and in different areas of practice in different places, and currently you're solo practitioner. So, what are some things that you've learned from some of those experiences?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is I'm so happy where I'm at now in northern Colorado, practicing in Chicago and in Phoenix. It was downtown urban areas, and I practiced for 10 years in Denver. And in northern Colorado, it's a small group of attorneys that practice family law, and we constantly interact with each other. So there's just more collegiality, a little bit more professionalism because you know you're going to be dealing with that attorney around the corner in another case. Whereas when I practice in Chicago, Phoenix, and Denver, you may have a case against someone, you'll never have another case with that person, and it might lead itself to a matter of practice that maybe you wouldn't do if you're going to be dealing with that attorney over and over and over again over your career. So I'm really pleased that this is where I've been, and I'm happy to be here.
And what was the first firm that you worked at, and were there any particular lessons you took from that?
Yes, yes, and for anybody in our audience that might be in law school or thinking about going to law school, or maybe your first year or two in practice, I had a professor in law school. He taught a bankruptcy course, and he said some things to us. It was third year, and he said some things to us that really stuck with me and some other classmates. That he ran his own firm, and he gave us a suggestion. He said, when you're looking for that first job, don't look for the highest paying job out there, although it'll be tempting. Look for the job that is willing to be patient with a first year associate. Look for the job that has the best community of mentors that is going to be willing to teach you and be patient with you, and that was the best advice I was ever given. The first firm I worked for in Chicago, I want to give them a shout out here: Sullivan, Taylor, and Gumina. Some of the most kindest, most patient family law attorneys I've ever come across, and they just taught me the fundamentals. They were willing to take the time to teach me the fundamentals. And one thing in particular for family law attorneys out there that they taught me is you have to remember the person that you're meeting with in a consultation. You have to remember the courage it took for them to get to that chair in your office. They had to get up that day, get themselves ready, drive to your office, park in a parking spot, wait in your lobby, and then sit in your office to discuss one of the most personal things someone could ever have to share about the breakdown of a marriage and share it with a perfect stranger. That's a perspective I learned at that first law firm that I don't know if I would have learned at a different type of firm, a higher paced, a bigger law firm. It was a small firm that really took the time to teach.
I love that about I love about what you're saying is that it's really from the client's perspective that you're thinking about the experience. And I think so often lawyers are trained sort of top down transactionally, what they should do procedurally or in terms of, filing things with court or presenting or argument or all sorts of skills that lawyers need to develop. But to actually pause and say, think of the courage it took for someone to sit before you today. I mean, that just speaks volumes about both who trained you and that you remember it and that I'm sure it continues into your practice today. But that is, so really quintessential about, I think, someone's experience when they are talking to someone for the first time.
Mhm.
I agree. I think it also the person you're meeting with can hopefully sense that you understand that perspective, and it gets the relationship, attorney-client relationship, off on the right foot.
So, what brought you into family law in the first place? You went from being a prosecutor to going into family law. Why that change? What was it about family law that you made you decide that this is where you wanted to be?
I saw that's a good question. I get asked that quite a bit. I saw that people I worked with at the prosecutor's office had been transitioning to family law firms. The people that did leave the office transitioned to
Mm.
family law. When I would speak with them, I would ask them, why did you go into family law? Is it a huge leap? Is it a big change? And the feedback I gathered was in family law, unfortunately, you're going to spend a lot of time in court, and the trial skills you learn as a prosecutor transition very well. But it's not all just about trial skills. You have to be willing to roll your sleeves up and empathize with clients and understand their perspective, where you didn't always have to have that perspective as a prosecutor or a criminal defense attorney. So the combination, I think, of using the trial skills I had learned as a prosecutor, and then just knowing my personality, background, and upbringing, I just kind of sensed that getting involved with families, getting involved with domestic violence victims, standing up for the little guy, I thought it would be a good transition for what I was interested in, and it worked out.
Well, and you talk about, going to court, right? And that prosecutors in your office said that the skills are transferable
Yeah.
from being in a criminal case to being in a family law case. Is that your experience as well? And in terms of being in court?
I think so. I think so. Yeah. I mean, certainly you have to be cognizant of the issues you're going to court about, because if you're going to cross-examine a sympathetic spouse, taking an aggressive approach, you may have cross-examined a criminal defendant. You better adjust it when you're going to be
Mhm.
cross-examining someone in a family law case. But I think the issue spotting, the impeaching credibility, those types of concepts transfer well. But it's not 100% transferable, because you have to adjust. You have to adjust in light of the issues you're litigating. But those cross examination skills you learn as a prosecutor come in very, very handy.
Mhm.
It sounds like the technical skills transfer well,
Yes.
but the sort of software or the pieces that are more the human focused are
Yes.
different. A
Absolutely.
fair statement.
That's a great
Yeah.
way to put it.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think it's interesting to distinguish, what you're doing in both courtrooms. Like in a criminal courtroom, it's I don't want to say a one-off, but it sort of is. I mean, you're litigating something and these people aren't hoping to meet again.
Yeah.
And it's really the opposite. Well, they may be hoping they don't meet again, but they will meet again and again and again. So, I mean, the question I think, or the takeaway often for lawyers is, how do we contribute to that, or how do we make that worse for families by our presence in the courtroom?
Two things come to mind with what we're talking about. I remember having a family law case in Arizona. It was a relocation case where my client was the father and the mother was trying to relocate the kids all the way to Florida. And it was kind of early in my career. And I remember getting up for the opening statement, standing at the podium. I was prepared, focused. And then I turned to my right for whatever reason. I just turned to my right to look at my client at the trial table, and he was clenching a photograph of the kids, and he was trembling. His hands were trembling, holding the photo. And it took my breath away for a moment. And I think that's, in a nutshell, that's the difference between prosecuting cases and family law. That you have to remember the emotion of what you're in court about. That it's not just about did a crime occur or not. It's not a civil suit between company A, company B. This is about families. It's about kids, and you have to maintain that kind of perspective.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think really recognize the long-term impact it has, especially on a removal case, or for people who are listening who may not know that what we're referring to by removal case is just legal language to say that one parent wants to move out of the state that they're living in with the other parent to another state and take the child or children with them. And I think I experienced something actually last week that was really moving, and it was at a conference that had a panel of young adult children who had been the subjects of contested custody court trials, and they were speaking about what their experience was with the court system, how it impacted their relationship with their parents, their siblings. And it was really, really powerful. And I think, it's really unusual. I don't think it's certainly the first time I had in a panel situation. Not that I haven't talked to people who've had that experience, but
Mhm.
question after question about who did you interact with the court? Did you speak to the judge? What did they say? Did you talk to a guardian ad litem? What did they say? What's your experience? Where did they meet you? Lots of questions about sort of how, and these were small children. I mean, who, at 8, 10, 4, 12 years old, what were their memories? And their memories were really powerful. And I think that, lawyers just don't often think or account for the long-term ramifications of what happens in those situations.
Absolutely. One thing I'm sure both of you share with clients, I know we share this with clients, that when we're contemplating going to trial, we emphasize that your relationship with your spouse or your former spouse is never going to be the same after a cross examination. It's never going to be the same. And you need to think about that because there's going to be times when you're going to have to sit in the same area at a soccer game or a recital or an eighth grade graduation and think about the long term ramifications of going to trial. Think of the long term ramifications of the line of questioning we're going to get into. And that reminds me of a personal experience I had. My wife and stepson, when my wife was dealing with her divorce and some post decree issues, I would talk to her from time to time. And we were dealing with an issue where her ex husband just wasn't complying with court orders, wasn't paying what he was supposed to pay, wasn't contributing what he was supposed to contribute. And my wife's not in the legal field. And I would, of course, just for my instincts, tell her, come on, we got to take him to court. He's got to face the consequences. These are court orders. And she taught me a valuable lesson that just because you can take someone to court doesn't mean you should take someone to court. And she reminded me of that lesson. We've got to sit next to him at hockey games. We've got to sit next to him at eighth grade graduations. And we didn't take him back to court. And I'd like to think I'd like to think, I don't talk to my son directly about this, but I'd like to think that there was a decorum between all of us that was preserved because we didn't take him back to court, because we didn't go down that
Mhm.
road. Now, not everyone's in that position. Sometimes you don't have a choice. You have to go back to court, but it's
Right.
something to really, really think about.
I think that's, I mean, absolutely true.
Mm.
That even if you have to go back to court, there are ways and ways to go and ways not to go. And I think what you were saying about, the line of questioning, what do you really need to ask? Like what's the nexus and the question that you're really trying to get to,
Right.
and do you need to diminish somebody in order to get there,
Yeah.
or are there better ways to prove your point? Is this necessary?
Yeah.
And yeah.
I would just like to, if it's all right with you, Steve, just reflect for a minute with you on a case that you had in my courtroom where it really was a picture in contrast, right? That you were being very professional and focused on the issues, and the other attorney and the other party, and I'm sure you recall the case I'm talking about, was just completely out of bounds and out of control, and I did what I could to control him, but he would not stop,
Yeah.
and he did not take your lesson, did not understand your lesson of, less can be more, and, make sure that you are o and recognizing the impact that you're having on the long-term relationship between the parties, that let alone the relationship between the attorneys in this small community.
I remember that case very well, and to tie in concilium to this, I specifically remember, that was a 2 or 3-day trial, and either
Mhm.
before or after one of the days, I was the last one or first one in the courtroom, and I was unpacking and or packing my things, and you and I were the only ones in the courtroom, and I mentioned something that boy, there's just got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be a better system, a better way of doing
Mm.
this type of work, not only for the professionals involved, but for the families involved. And that's when you brought up the idea of concilium to me. And that's where that discussion started. That's where my
Oh.
relationship with
Ah,
concilium
sort of give
began.
oh,
But yeah, yeah, that those types of cases are challenging. And what I remember about that case, and again, it's a lesson. The takeaway was you're time limited in trials. You only have a certain amount of time, and in that particular case, that attorney spent about 90% of his time trying to prove a point that there was some nefarious plan afoot between
Yep.
my office and one of the experts, so that he only had about 4 to 5 minutes to actually ask his client questions about the issue we were there about. And
Right.
I could sense the frustration on his client's face when you cut them off at the time limit, and she was mid
Mhm.
sentence. She really didn't get to really talk about or tell her story.
Right. Right, and he had been warned. He had
Yeah,
been duly warned
yeah.
repeatedly. But,
yeah.
just to circle back with the concilium conversation, I didn't specifically remember having that conversation with you, but Heidi, my last year on the bench, Heidi was teaching me the concilium, techniques and process and way of thinking, and so it obviously had permeated the work that I was doing on the bench, and it's the reason that I retired was so that I could do this and invite fantastic attorneys like you into the fold of, the tapestry and, becoming a concilium practitioner.
Yeah, yeah. What I share with folks when I'm asked about concilium, either I have two different answers when I'm asked by experienced attorneys or newer attorneys. I explain it that concilium is literally the best practices in every aspect of representing folks in family law. It's
Mm,
the best practices, and for experienced attorneys, it's a way to fine tune what you've already learned. But just to fine tune it, it's a refresher on so many different aspects of what we do. But for younger attorneys, it's really I have yet to be at a firm in Colorado that has the time to train folks, and I've worked at a couple places, and I can't say that my firm has the time to train people. But with Concilium, it's really recommended. I really recommend it for attorneys with under 5 years experience because it really fine tunes best practices on trial preparation, experts, raising your financial IQ, gaining that client's perspective, helping them understand the long term
Yeah.
when they're trying to figure out what they want in a case. So I'm just been thrilled with my experience with Concilium.
Oh, thank you.
Me really happy. And it also makes me wonder, um, how, if it has, I was about to assume that it had, but if it has acted hopefully positively on your own sort of family experience, mental health, preservation as a family law attorney, how it may have impacted you in those ways.
Well, I'll say this: I'm in trial less often. I settle
Mhm.
cases. I think I settle cases
Yeah.
more often since I've become a Concilium practitioner. And that, of course, has plenty of impact. That's more time with my family. That's less stress. That's so all kinds of things are affiliated with that. But Concilium, being a family law attorney, it wears you down from time to time because it's hard not to soak in the stress that you're sensing from your clients and the conflict. But Concilium, I would say, recharged my batteries. That it gave me a sense of it recharged the pride I take in being a family law attorney, and that you are a part of a solution. You're being a part of the creation of two families, not the breakup of one. So I really,
Mhm.
I'd say maybe somewhere along the line, I soured on being a family law attorney and really questioned, is this what I want to do until the time I retire? But Concilium really kind of reopened my eyes as to the benefits of why we do this.
Mhm.
I mean, I love that it had that effect, but I think that it really, I had that same experience, Steve. I think it resonates so deeply what you're saying because when I started shifting my own perspective and mentality, I thought, I feel re energized and I feel less, I don't know, I don't want to say, well, there were times I felt bored. I felt bored with the process. And I think what's really dangerous for family law attorneys is feeling like, oh, this is another case like whatever.
Right.
No one's life is like whatever. No one's life is like someone else's life. And to really listen intently, compassionately, and have the curiosity to really ask the questions that help someone re envision their next best chapter was so energizing instead of being mired in negativity all the time, which I think the process, the sort of preparation for trial and, just finding all the loopholes and all the ways that you can wear somebody else's case down is not, is not a positive experience.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
yeah, yeah, it's great to hear you say that.
Mhm.
In fact, yeah.
Well, and I'll also say, I mean, one of the privileges that I've had is working with you over the years that you've been in Colorado, both as a mediator before I was on the bench when you were with the firm down in Denver, um, and then when I was on the bench, having you in my courtroom, and since then having the privilege of working with you on different mediation cases. And one of the things that I love about your approach and your creativity in solving cases is really looking at every aspect of what the solution could be. And I'm thinking in particular around that challenging case with the land use issue in the divorce. And I don't know, without talking about anything confidential, I wonder if you could just sort of talk about the process of that because we traveled that process together, but then you and the other attorney brought it home.
Yeah, I think I think we all have cases that are challenging from time to time, and you as the case progresses, you can identify where perhaps your client is mired in their position and they're not budging. And I think just transparency, some blunt but diplomatic transparency is what helps there, and give the client the perspective of, hey, I'm going to pretend to be the judge here, and here's what I'm listening to, and try to put a mirror up to your client and try to put them in the shoes of the judge, and here's what they're hearing, and then have your client kind of listen to what the other side's saying. So, not the best way of explaining it, but I think just being blunt with your client that, look, I don't know what the judge is going to do here. Do you really want to put this in the judge's hands? Do you want to
Mhm.
spend another 10, 15, $20,000, another 3, 6 months, where we've got the chance here, maybe to tweak a few things, and most judges have that saying, if there's a settlement offer on the table that you can live with, maybe it's not perfect, maybe it's not great, but you can live with it,
Right.
take it. And
Mhm.
I love telling clients that, because sometimes they're just so mired in the emotion of their position, they're unable to put a mirror up to their position. So
Mhm.
that, I think, that comes with experience from time to time, but having a mediator like you, Julie, with your perspective of handling, presiding over these cases for 10 years, that also helps clients budge, because
Mhm.
here's a judge who's heard it
Right.
all, done it all. Yeah, there's cases like that from time to time where you find yourself, just, boy, how are we going to get these folks to move? But it
Right.
happens. It happens once in a while.
Well, and the other piece that, struck me about it was I stepped out at the end, and then it was you and the other attorney and the 2 parties getting down into some fine detail, and I was not available for those conversations, but I recall that you called and told me that the way that you brought it home
Oh yeah,
was you invited everyone to dinner.
that's right. That's
And
right. Who
yeah,
taught me
and
that?
sat around the table to
I think I
say,
learned that in Chicago. I learned that in Chicago. I think either a judge or somebody taught me that, boy, it's hard. It's harder to argue and disagree when you're breaking bread together. So we went through two 8 to 10 hour mediations after our 5 mediations with you. And in that second session, it was about 5 o'clock, and I just mentioned to the other attorney, we were both Italian, by the way, so maybe that was the common denominator. I said, "Hey, Marco, why don't we order dinner for everybody, and let's break bread here and see if we can get these final few items, get over the bridge." And we did, we did.
Mhm.
Great story. And I think it's so true. It's the humanity. I mean,
Hmm.
even when you're angry and disappointed and feeling all sorts of emotions that you'd rather not feel, there are ways to sort of increase the probability of somebody seeing something more positively, in sort of
Yeah,
just cracking that window open a little bit.
that reminds me. I think I've told you this story before, Julie. There was a judge down in Denver when I was a younger attorney, and we were having a lot of conflict. I think it was a relocation case, and the judge issued an order for both attorneys to go out to lunch together.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
if it should be embarrassing that I'm telling this story, but the judge issued an order that we had to go out to lunch together. We could not bill our client for the time. Just go out to
Mhm.
lunch together, chat, don't
Uh,
discuss the case.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
it's
I'm gonna
great.
I'm gonna pull that out of my back pocket
That,
next time. I hadn't thought about that one, but that's a good one.
but that's great. Um, It's making me think about environments too, in terms of like where we talk and settle and negotiate. Whether it's in Julie's office as a mediator versus a courtroom versus a restaurant versus, a round table versus a rectangular table. Like all these things really influence and matter. I think even the colors or the lack of color in a space, changes how people see each other and how they feel. I think all these pieces of how we get to yes matter, and I think they leave people with certain feelings, depending upon how we construct an environment. Um,
I couldn't agree more. Right now I'm involved in a case where the other attorney down in Denver wants to schedule a full 9-hour mediation. And I just my background, I've had some experience with those types of mediations that that by the time you get to the seventh, eighth, ninth hour mediation, there's fatigue setting in. And
Right.
I've just had too many cases where people agree to something in that ninth hour and they wake up the next morning and you're getting a screaming phone call that they want to
yeah,
back out of the
Mhm.
agreement. So I
yeah,
won't do it. I won't do it. I'll do a half day. I'll do a 4 hour. And
Mhm.
then if we make progress, we can even schedule 2 half days right now. We can do half day on
Yep.
Tuesday, we can do the other half day Thursday. But yeah, I agree with you that that comment you just made, Heidi, about a round table versus a rectangular table, that is that's a very interesting point. That's a very
yeah.
interesting point. I
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
that is very interesting. Yeah, all those
I
little things come into play.
Yeah.
long ago put a round table in my office. I for years had a rectangular table. I actually did it at our dinner table at home too, to be perfectly forthright. I did that when my son was about I don't know, 11 or 12 and just pushing the boundaries. And we sort of had when I was growing up, we had literally had assigned seats at the table. We didn't have assigned seats at the table, but there was sort of an unspoken rule that like the grown-ups sat at the ends of the table and the kids sat on the side. And he decided to usurp that. And I decided to get a round table because I didn't want to say outright, you can't take on sort of a more authoritarian, I don't know, a role that you feel is more. I guess I didn't want you to feel like you had authority. I also didn't want you to feel like you were being dismissed, and the way to equalize it was to just say everybody has a voice, and this is how it's gonna go.
Yeah, I like that.
So yeah. Yeah, it was a good solution, but I guess I'm wondering how much of it was about you and, no, never
All of it.
mind. Steve, you are quite the movie buff. I know that from
Yeah.
different conversations. So tell me one of the things that you like to do when you travel. Tell us about your travels and your journeys that you take, especially with your son.
Yeah. So my love for movies comes from my childhood. My dad was a huge movie buff. And when he would tell me stories about going to the movies in the 40s and 50s, I was fascinated. He had a story when they re-released the movie Dracula in the 40s, I guess. And my dad and my aunt Dolores went to go see it. They were so scared. I just had this picture of what the story they told me that once they got out of the theater, they ran all the way home. And he just instilled in me a love of movies. And what my son and I now do, my son Noah loves movies just like I do. We love to travel to locations where famous movie scenes were filmed. And we do it now wherever we go, wherever we travel. If there's a famous place where they filmed a scene, we love to travel there and take photos and just imagine, what it was like when they filmed that scene and the famous people that were there. It's just become a thing. We've New Orleans, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, New Mexico, Dallas. Any place we go, we try to. There's some great websites out there now that you can look up a city and they'll tell you all the places that have filmed there.
Fascinating. That's absolutely fascinating. Do you look at silent film too, or do you
Oh
look
yeah,
only at
yeah. There's some. My son, he's a huge Buster Keaton fan and Charlie Chaplin fan, and there are some locations in Los Angeles that you wouldn't believe they're untouched since
Oh,
they
wow.
filmed like a hundred years ago. The location is almost untouched.
wow,
Yeah.
wow. I've got my son in touch with you. He's in the middle of putting these silent film reels together. Um, and it's too much to explain right here, right now. But anyway, fascinating conversation to be had, I'm sure. That is really,
Yeah.
really
What
um,
was your favorite place that you found? The favorite place that you and your son found?
Oh, let's see. I'm a huge fan of the Godfather series, And we, during the first year or two of the pandemic, we as a family decided to do a road trip to go see some family in Los Angeles. And we drove through Lake Tahoe. And I remembered that Lake Tahoe was where the scenes in Godfather
Right.
2 were filmed,
Right.
where the Corleone family owned this house. And I
Yep.
remember looking it up where it was located, but it was hard to get to. You could not get there just from driving on a public street. And the famous scene where Al Pacino's in the he where they knock off. Well, I'm not going to give away anything in the movie, but there's a famous
Yeah.
scene. There's a famous scene where they show Al Pacino looking out from the house, and we wanted to get to that side of the house. You couldn't get there unless you took a boat out there, and the boats that day, they were not going to that section of Lake Tahoe, so we had to pay the person a couple extra bucks to take us out there, and it took a long time. It was windy, so it was just challenge after challenge, but that was satisfying.
So fun. You
Uh,
got
Yeah, yeah.
amazing.
My
I
wife
love
my wife
that
thinks we're
commitment.
crazy. She thinks we're crazy. She's like, "Watch the movie again. What do we got to do this for?"
That's right. You'll see it. You'll see it there.
Funny. I love it. Well, thinking and realizing how much you love movies, you must have watched the Oscars recently. It's making me think that you must
Oh
have
yeah.
been. Did you think they were fair results? Did you think they?
Let's see.
Did they get it right
Yeah,
in your
I
view?
exactly.
I thought they got it right. Every year we do the Oscars contest in our family. We fill out the ballots,
Uh-huh.
and my son always wins. Let's see. I think they did get it right this year, although I would have loved to have seen Benicio del Toro win Best Actor instead of Sean
Mhm.
Penn. It was a
Mhm.
close race, but that one battle after another, terrific movie. So I think they got it
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Good.
Cool. That's great.
What's your favorite movie of all time? That's probably a hard question
Probably
for
That's a
both
tough
everybody.
of us.
one. I think I'd go with It's a Wonderful Life. There's just so
That's
much.
my favorite.
That's
There's
great.
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I know.
much
Like
to love
so
about
much.
it. So
Yeah,
much to love about that one.
Yeah.
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 That makes me want to watch it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And such a great message, right? That every person's life makes a difference.
Yeah, yeah, there's the in the backstory I've read about and studied so much about that movie. That was Jimmy Stewart's first movie after he came back from World War II. And he did not want to do the screwball comedies that he was known for prior to that. He had a very tough experience in World War II as a combat pilot, saw a lot of death during his war experience, and of course Hollywood wanted him to do a bunch of war hero movies, and he forbid that. So he's really at a crossroads of where he wanted to take his career, and he knew Frank Capra, the director, from a previous movie they had done together. And when he saw the script, he felt that was the right vehicle for him. But it was a risk for both of them because they were an independent movie studio, and Jimmy Stewart didn't know if he still had the chops after what he'd gone through in the war. He didn't know if he could play that part. And that particular scene when he's at the bar, if you remember, he's at the bar and he's
Mhm.
praying to God for some kind of sign. Those are real tears. Those are real tears coming down his face. That was a difficult scene for him. So there's just so much about that movie, the backstory, the message, the acting. It's just you can't beat it.
Well, talk about somebody who had the grit to like re-envision a life after the war and what he'd been through,
Yeah.
and just taking control and sort of
Hmm.
this is who I am
Yeah.
now, and how I want to represent. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty powerful.
Mhm.
There's some interesting articles out there. If anybody in the audience wants to Google them, that the real hero of the movie is Donna Reed's character. That she's the
Oh,
driving
sure.
force that creates the change that happens. And if you really do a deep dive into the story, there's some credibility to that she's really the one that's pushing and pushing for
Mhm.
change.
Right.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think that's true. So, everyone's life makes a difference, Steve, and you certainly have made a difference in many, many people's lives in the work that you've done with families. Are there any sort of last thoughts or messages that you would want to share with folks that are listening about who you are or what you do or what they should be thinking about if they're going through a hard time?
Well, for the attorneys in our audience or the legal professionals in our audience, one thing I would share is find a way to protect yourself just mentally when you're doing this type of work, because it can take its toll. And my suggestion is to find something that you can, whether it's a hobby, whether it's a friendship, whether it's something that takes your mind off this stuff. And when you're in the middle of a stressful week or a stressful trial prep or something like that, make sure you're taking that time to separate yourself from your work. Um, because you got to protect yourself. This is difficult stuff we're
Mm.
dealing with, and your mental health is a priority. um, for people that might be watching this that are not legal professionals but are people going through a family law case, again, mental health. This is tough stuff, and make sure you have a resource, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a best friend, maybe it's a family member. You're going to need that person to talk to and vent to make your way through this process. And there will be brighter days. There will be brighter days.
Mhm.
You just have to keep that in mind and have your support system in place while you're going through this.
Mhm.
I hear a thread here of community and the importance of community in terms of divorce support groups for people who are going through it exist. And I really encourage people to seek those out. And I would think you would too, when you're working with people. And, hopefully Concilium is a community too that we think that integrates for professionals an opportunity to sort of be together and work together.
Mhm.
And, you know, I think it does provide some good support in time.
It does, and especially for people thinking about Concilium. If you're a solo practitioner, um, Concilium is a godsend, because when I worked at a big firm in Denver, it was a firm of 30 to 40 attorneys and paralegals. And whenever I had a question or I needed to brainstorm with somebody, I could just walk down the hall and plop down in somebody's office. When you're a solo, you can't do that anymore. And you talk to most solo people, that's what you miss. You miss having that support system. Hey, just having the ability to talk to another concilium practitioner. Am I thinking about this the right way? Am I missing something?
Mhm.
Having that network of people who are experienced or more experienced than you, boy, that is so handy when you're on your own.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I
Yeah.
say that. Yeah. It's such a delight to have a chance to talk to you. I'm a little envious
Yeah.
as a closer proximity, but this
That's right.
Heidi, I can't
That's
wait
right.
I love the Boston area. I look forward to getting out there
come visit.
sometime, and I will
Come
look you
visit.
up.
Oh, we would love to entertain you and host you. Come, there are films made here. There's lots to explore.
That's right. You could probably name a
Uh,
handful of them right off the bat, right, Steve?
Will Hunting.
Yes, 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 yes. Before
Yeah,
I met you,
anything with
Heidi.
Ben Affleck or Matt Damon, and you've got
Exactly.
it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So if people want to find you, Steve, what's the best way to find you?
My office manager is going to kill me. I don't do as good of a job as I should as to knowing all of these things. I know I'm on LinkedIn. I know we have a
Okay.
website. I know we're
And your website is I'll share it
website,
for you. No Code Divorce Law.
nocodivorcelaw.com. We have a
NoCodeDivorceLaw.com for Northern
yeah,
Colorado, divorcelaw.com.
we have a Facebook page. We have my LinkedIn page, but I think most, like everybody else, the website is probably the best way to look me up.
And you can also find Steve through the Concilium Institute website. He is
That's
on
right.
the directory there. So if you are looking for very able, skilled, fun, and funny, and a Concilium practitioner who may feed you if you come to his office, uh,
Probably be Italian food though.
Italian food, come to conciliuminstitute.com and look for Steve in the Colorado portion of the directory. So, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. It has been absolutely delightful.
Thanks for having me.